It was just after 6 a.m. when Marcus Hayes, a 47-year-old white man with thinning hair and a permanent scowl, was jolted from sleep by a loud thud next door. Irritated, he threw off the covers and stomped to the window, scowling through the blinds. A moving truck. Great. More noise. More strangers. As he narrowed his eyes, he saw a tall, broad-shouldered black man, mid-40s, confident posture, unloading boxes from the truck. Marcus's lip curled. "Here we go," he muttered. His suspicions escalated when two police officers stepped out of the house minutes later. They weren't arresting the man, just talking, but that didn't stop Marcus from jumping to conclusions. He slammed open his front door and shouted across the lawn, "Hey, keep it down, thug. Don't make those cops come back and drag your sorry ass to jail." The man paused, turned slowly, and stared at him. Calm, silent, then returned to carrying his boxes. Marcus smirked. "Thought so," he grunted, walking back inside, satisfied. But he had no idea that neighbor wasn't someone you could intimidate. Later that morning, Marcus found a cardboard box near his driveway. Without checking it, he kicked it into the street, shouting, "Get this trash out here!" From behind him, a voice spoke, deep and measured. "That's mine. I'd appreciate it if you didn't damage my property." Marcus swirled around. "Your junk landed on my side. You should be grateful I didn't torch it," he snapped. The man stepped closer. His presence was commanding, unsettling, but instead of arguing, he simply picked up the box and walked away. That night, Marcus told the story with laughter to his poker buddies over beers. "I backed off, like a damn coward," he said. But across the street, in the dim glow of a laptop screen, that same neighbor, Torius Cole, was uploading something. Quietly, precisely. Footage, logs, a map. He wasn't moving. He was moving on someone. I'm Marcus Hayes, drug trafficker, arms dealer, self-proclaimed untouchable, had no clue the biggest threat to his empire just parked across the street with a badge in his wallet and a plan to end everything. Before we show you how a single knock shattered Marcus's entire world, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay until the end, because nothing about this story is what it seems. The next morning, the sun had barely crept over the rooftops when Marcus opened his door to grab the paper. He froze. There was Darius again, kneeling near the curb, his head bent, as if inspecting something near Marcus's trash bin. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, already storming down the steps. "I don't know what kind of garbage-picking freak show you run in your old neighborhood, but this isn't it. Step away from my damn trash." Darius looked up slowly, his face unreadable, calm, still. But his eyes, those steady, unwavering eyes, held something deeper. Something Marcus didn't understand and didn't like. "I dropped a piece of mail by accident," Darius said, his voice low, smooth. "Was just getting it." "Sure you were," Marcus sneered, walking up and deliberately tipping the garbage bin towards him. "Looking for drugs or something to sell, filthy scavenger?" Darius didn't respond, just picked up the letter, intact, addressed to himself, and turned back toward his house. But for a brief second, Marcus saw it. The twitch in Darius's jaw, the tightening of his knuckles. He was holding something in. Good, Marcus thought. Let it build. Just don't forget who runs this block. But what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that every encounter, every insult, every act of petty cruelty was being documented. That evening, Marcus's doorbell rang. Again. And again, 5 times in a row, each press sharper than the last. When he yanked open the door, Darius was there, standing silently, holding a small tray of cornbread muffins. "I thought I'd try again," Darius said evenly. "My mother always said it's harder to hate someone who offers you food." Marcus stared at him like he was deranged. Then, in one quick motion, he knocked the tray clean out of Darius's hands. Muffins scattered across the porch like broken promises. "I told you, I don't want anything from you," Marcus barked. "Not your damn food, not your fake manners. Stay on your side of the street." Darius didn't move. Not at first. He just looked down at the mess on the ground, then back up at Marcus. There was no fury in his face, only calculation. "You really should be more careful," he said quietly, brushing crumbs off his shirt. "You never know who's watching." The next day was silent. Too silent. No loud complaints, no shouted slurs, no garbage thrown over the fence. Just Marcus, sitting alone in his kitchen, nervously sipping coffee and staring at the front window, waiting for Darius to show his face. He didn't. Instead, Marcus noticed something else. A black SUV parked across the street, tinted windows, no movement. Then another. And then, at precisely 4:13 p.m., a white van with no logo pulled up 2 houses down. A man stepped out, looked around, and nodded once toward Darius's place. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. His lights stayed on, his gun loaded, safety off, rested on the table by the door. At 2:34 a.m., a motion lights triggered in his backyard. He bolted upright, grabbing the gun. On his surveillance screen, a figure moved. Not Darius, someone else. But Darius stepped into frame seconds later, calm as ever, speaking to the figure, then pointing straight at Marcus's basement window. Marcus's heart stopped. They knew. Racing downstairs, he tore open the hidden door behind the bookshelf, bolted into the basement, and began checking the safes, the shelves, the lab. Still there, all of it, the pills, the cash, the equipment, nothing touched. But something was wrong. The temperature, the air. Someone had been down there. He grabbed his phone, opened the camera app, and stopped cold. The red light on the corner shelf was blinking. His secret camera, the one facing the entrance, had been activated. He hadn't turned it on. He wasn't the one watching. Upstairs, footsteps echoed above him. Not one pair. Marcus spun around, gun raised, panic flooding every vein. But before he reached the stairwell, the basement door slammed shut. From the outside. "Marcus Hayes," a voice boomed through a speaker above. "This is the DEA. You are surrounded." He dropped the gun. Screams, sirens, flashlights burst in. The doors kicked in. Boots thundered overhead. And then he saw him, standing among them, arms folded across his chest, badge glinting in the flashlight beam. Darius Cole. Not a neighbor. Not a victim. A federal agent. "Surprised?" Darius asked, meeting his eyes through the bars of the makeshift holding cell in the basement. "You should have taken the muffins." Marcus stared through the bars, his lips trembling with rage, his eyes wide with disbelief. Around him, DEA agents were dismantling his empire, seizing crates of pills, disassembling machines, photographing stacks of dirty cash. The basement no longer looked like a sanctuary, it looked like a crime scene. Darius turned away, his footsteps echoing as he climbed the stairs. But he wasn't done. Not yet. By sunrise, the news had broken. Helicopters circled overhead, reporters crowded the sidewalk, shoving microphones at agents and neighbors alike. The headline? DEA agent goes undercover in suburbia to expose drug kingpin neighbor. Inside his cell, Marcus was silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because his voice had finally lost its power. No insults, no barking orders, just the slow, choking realization that he'd been played, masterfully. But the public only saw the ending. They didn't see the build-up. They didn't see what Darius had endured to make it happen. 2 weeks earlier, the plan had nearly collapsed. Late one night, Marcus had come home drunk, paranoid, and wild-eyed. He'd spotted Darius walking his dog and cornered him by the mailbox. "You think I don't see you watching me?" Marcus had slurred, eyes bloodshot. "You think you're smart?" Darius didn't flinch, just held the leash tighter. "Smart?" he'd replied. "No, just observant." That answer almost got him killed. Marcus had pulled a knife, small silver trembling in his hand. "Keep looking at me like that and I'll put this straight through your gut." Darius remembered the cold blade tapping against his ribs, remembered the pounding of his heart. But he didn't move, didn't blink. Instead, he'd said calmly, "Then do it. Just know I'm not the only one watching." That was the moment Marcus backed off. Because deep down, even a predator knows when he's being hunted. And that wasn't the only time Darius had to bite back. Days before the takedown, Marcus had hurled a full bag of garbage at him in broad daylight, splattering food waste across his suit and face. Onlookers gasped. No one intervened. But Darius, he didn't retaliate. He just stood there, wiped himself clean, and walked away. Why? Because revenge wasn't the goal. Justice was. And justice takes timing. That patience, those moments of restraint, made the takedown possible. Every insult was a distraction. Every humiliation, a delay tactic. Marcus was too busy trying to break Darius' spirit to realize he was exposing his own weaknesses. But the real heartbreak? It wasn't the violence, it wasn't the threats. It was that no one in the neighborhood stopped Marcus. Not once. Not when he yelled racial slurs from his porch, not when he threw garbage at a man trying to offer kindness, not even when he pulled a shotgun. They looked away, or worse, they nodded in quiet agreement. That silence spoke louder than any insult. Darius didn't just endure Marcus's wrath, he endured a neighborhood's complicity. And still he stayed. Not out of pride, out of purpose. Because he wasn't just gathering evidence, he was teaching a lesson. And now that lesson played on every screen across the country. Footage from Darius's body cam showed Marcus screaming at him, threatening him, pushing him, all while the agent stood calm, never raising his voice, never lifting a finger. The contrast was damning. The monster didn't wear a mask. He wore khakis and a polo shirt. He mowed his lawn every Sunday. He hosted barbecues with city council members. He was the pillar of the community. Until the community saw what he really was. In court, Marcus's lawyer begged for leniency, claimed his client was under stress, misjudged, misunderstood. But when Darius took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't condemn. He told the truth. I didn't go undercover to punish a man, he said. I went undercover to protect a neighborhood. And I stayed quiet not because I was weak, but because I believed the system would speak louder than I ever could. The jury didn't even take two. Guilty on all counts. As Marcus was led out, in cuffs, Darius passed him in the hallway. No words, just a nod. Not of victory, but of closure. Because power doesn't always come from shouting. Sometimes it comes from waiting, and when the moment comes, it lands harder than any insult ever could. For Marcus, that moment came not in court, not in handcuffs, not even when the sentence was read. It came later, alone, in a cell no bigger than the pantry where he used to stash his cash. Because that's when it hit him. The truth wasn't just that he'd been caught. It was how he'd been caught. By the very man he'd called worthless. By someone he thought was beneath him, and most of all, by someone who had seen everything. What Marcus didn't know, and what no one knew, was that Darius hadn't just been assigned to investigate him, he had requested it. Weeks earlier, deep in a federal office lined with screens and sealed doors, Darius had stared at Marcus Hayes' file. Why this one? His supervisor had asked. We've got bigger targets. Darius's jaw had tightened. Because this one hides in plain sight. And that was the danger. Marcus wasn't some cartel boss hiding in a jungle. He was the man who shook hands with the mayor, donated to local schools, played golf with judges. He wore clean clothes, drove a Lexus, attended church, and ran one of the most sophisticated drug labs on the East Coast, right underneath a neighborhood of families who trusted him. That was the kind of monster Darius had vowed to find and destroy. So when the operation launched, Darius didn't just show up as a neighbor, he became one. He got his own lawn, brought his own groceries, even joined the HOA meeting where Marcus laughed at his suggestion to build a community garden. That laugh, so smug, so dismissive, burned in Darius's mind for weeks. But the real turning point came the night Marcus nearly killed someone. It wasn't Darius. It was a delivery boy. A teenager, Latino, quiet kid named Leo, showed up late with a pizza. Marcus had opened the door drunk, shotgun in hand. You people are always late, he'd snarled, yanking the box from the kid's hands and hurling it onto the porch. Try that again and you'll be the one in the box. The boy hadn't said a word, just turned, trembling, and walked away. But Darius saw it from his porch. Every word, every movement, and he'd recorded it. That moment changed everything, because it wasn't just about drugs anymore. It was about power, abuse, control. Marcus hadn't built an empire on business. He built it on fear. Fear of speaking up, fear of retaliation, fear of being seen. But now he was the one exposed. And the cracks widened fast. A week after his arrest, neighbors started talking, quietly at first, then louder. One woman admitted Marcus threatened to evict her for asking about a strange chemical smell from his basement vents. Another man confessed he'd been paid $2,000, 0 cents, to forget that Marcus's packages came without labels, in bulk, from China. Soon the truth unraveled like a pulled thread. The perfect neighbor had been the cancer eating the community from the inside. But the twist, it wasn't just the adults who remembered Marcus, it was the children. One evening, after everything had come out, Darius stood on his porch, sipping tea, when Leo, the same delivery boy, walked up the steps with something in his hands, a drawing, crayon on folded notebook paper. It showed 2 houses, one red, one blue. The red one had smoke pouring from its windows, a scary face in black scribbles. The blue house had a man standing out front, tall, calm, with a gold star on his chest. "Is that me?" Darius asked, surprised. Leo nodded. "You didn't yell," he said softly. "You just watched, and then, boom." Darius chuckled. "That's how justice works. Quiet, until it isn't." But what broke him wasn't the drawing. It was the boy's next words. "Thank you for making him go away. Now I can sleep." Darius blinked, caught off guard by the sudden heat behind his eyes. He'd faced bullets. He had faced death. This was why he did it. Not for headlines, not for promotions, but for that moment when fear turned into peace, for someone too small to fight back. Marcus Hayes had built his legacy on intimidation and hate. But Darius Cullen, he built his on silence, strategy, and strength. And when the dust settled, the community didn't just rebuild. They renamed the park at the end of the block, Cole Square, not in honor of a hero, but in remembrance of a lesson. Never assume the quiet one is weak. Sometimes he's just waiting for you to slip. But what no one expected was what came after the fall. Marcus Hayes was gone, sentenced, disgraced, forgotten by the same people who used to laugh at his dinner parties and shake his hand in photo apps. His house sat empty, its windows boarded, its garden overrun with weeds. The same neighbors who once turned a blind eye now crossed the street just to avoid walking past it. But Darius, he stayed. He didn't ask for praise. He didn't give interviews. He quietly returned to his small 2-story home on the corner lot and resumed his life, mowing the lawn, walking his dog, waving to the kids on bikes, as if nothing had ever happened. Till one day something did happen. A letter arrived, no return address, just one word in shaky handwriting. Inside was a photo. Blurry, faded, but unmistakable. A much younger Marcus, standing beside a teenage boy with the same eyes, the same mouth. The back was scribbled with only 6 words. "My brother, I tried to warn you." Darius stared at him for a long time, knew what it meant. Marcus hadn't acted alone. It was a bigger fish. And suddenly it wasn't over. That night, Darius pulled out the original case file, scanned every page, every contact, every phone number. There it was. An unmarked LLC, long dismissed, connected to a storage facility in a nearby city. By morning, he was there. The unit was clean, too clean. But in the far back, behind a false wall, Darius found something chilling, a hard drive and a safe. Inside the safe, names, dates, transactions, judges, officers, city officials. It wasn't just Marcus. This was an entire network. And at the center of it, a name Darius recognized, Councilman Gregory T. Mars. The same man who'd given Marcus a community award 3 years earlier. The same man who'd once praised Darius in a press release while shaking hands with the monster he was secretly funding. It was betrayal layered in velvet. But this time, Darius didn't go in alone. With the backing of the DOJ, he spearheaded a months-long sting. Quietly, methodically, just like before, he let the silence build, let the arrogance fester, until the night of the gala, a black tie fundraiser, flashing cameras, laughter, speeches. Councilman Miles stood at the podium, thanking the community for their trust and vision. That's when the lights cut out. And when they came back on, Darius Cole stood center stage. Microphone in one hand, arrest warrant in the other. The gasp that filled the ballroom shattered glass. "Mr. Miles," Darius said calmly, voice echoing, "you're under federal investigation for conspiracy, trafficking, and obstruction of justice. You funded it, you protected it, you lied to everyone in this room." Miles stammered, face drained of color. "This is a mistake." "No," Darius interrupted. "The mistake was thinking no one was watching." The arrest made national headlines, but Darius didn't bask in it. He returned home that night and sat on his porch. Same quiet chair, same steady calm. Only this time, people came to him. A teenage girl dropped off a card. "Because of you, my dad's clean." A retired veteran saluted him with tears in his eyes. Even Leo, the pizza delivery kid, showed up again, this time with a hoodie embroidered with 2 words, "Cole Strong." And for the first time in a long time, Darius smiled, not from victory, but from peace. Because justice isn't just about punishment, it's about restoration, and sometimes the loudest impact comes from the quietest strength. But the real question isn't how justice was served, it's what came next. Because even after cameras faded and the last headline was written, Darius Cole remained exactly who he was from the beginning, a man of purpose, of control, of quiet fire. But something in the neighborhood had changed, not just the people, not just the mood. The silence, the bad kind of silence, was gone. Gone were the days when people turned away from injustice out of fear. Now they leaned in, they spoke up, they stood beside each other. Darius didn't just take down a criminal network, he restored something that had been missing for far too long. Courage. Children who once whispered now laughed loudly on sidewalks. Doors once closed to strangers were now left open for potlucks and shared meals. And in the very same park where Marcus had once patrolled like a king, the community planted a memorial garden. It wasn't big, just a bench, some wildflowers, and a plaque that read, "Justice blooms where fear is silenced." Darius visited often, not to be earned, but to remind himself why silence matters, when to use it, and when to break it. He never saw himself as a hero, and maybe that's why he became one, not by shouting over others, but by knowing when to listen, when to act, and when to wait for the exact moment that would change everything. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this. Sometimes the monsters wear masks that look like neighbors. Sometimes courage wears no armor, only patience. And sometimes the smallest act of restraint becomes the loudest form of power. Because real strength isn't in how loud you speak. It's in how deeply your silence can shake the ground beneath injustice. Thank you for staying with us until the end. If this story moved you or made you think twice about what true justice looks like, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. We share powerful true-to-life stories like this one every week, stories that reveal the truth behind the mask and the quiet warriors among us. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who believes in justice, too. Until next time, thank you for watching, and remember, the strongest voice in the room might just be the one that waited in silence.